He didn't sprint. That was the detail that stayed with people long after the celebration had ended and the stadium had emptied and the highlight had been watched and rewatched on every screen that carries baseball. He didn't sprint home. He didn't slide dramatically into the plate with his arms outstretched and his face twisted into the expression of a man who has just done something historic. He ran. Controlled. Purposeful. The way Shohei Ohtani does everything, with exactly the amount of effort the moment requires and not a single ounce more. And when his foot touched home plate and the umpire's hand stayed at his sides and 40,000 people understood simultaneously what had just happened, the sound that erupted from that stadium was not just a roar. It was release. The accumulated tension of 9 innings of baseball finding its exit all at once, through 40,000 throats, in a single enormous wave of sound that rolled across the field and up into the night sky and kept going long after it should have stopped. The Dodgers had won. Walk-off. Series lead. And Shohei Ohtani had scored the run that ended it. To understand what that moment meant, you have to understand what the 9 innings before it had felt like. Because this was not a game that ever felt comfortable. This was not the kind of victory that reveals itself early and simply requires patience to complete. This was the other kind, the kind that stays unresolved until the very last second, that demands everything from everyone involved, that refuses to be decided until baseball itself decides it is ready. Both teams came into this game understanding what was at stake. A series lead. Momentum heading into the final game. The particular psychological weight that comes from knowing your opponent has to win tomorrow while you only have to not lose. These things matter in baseball. They matter in ways that don't always show up in the statistics but that every player on every roster in every clubhouse feels in their chest when they take the field. The Dodgers felt it. The opposing dugout felt it. And for 8.5 innings, neither side was willing to give the other what they needed. The game moved the way tense games move, in small increments, in near misses, in moments that almost became something and then didn't. Leads changed hands. Leads disappeared. The bullpens on both sides worked through situations that required precision and delivered it, mostly, which only tightened the game further and pushed the resolution further into the future. By the time the 9th inning arrived, the score was tied. The stadium was electric in that specific way that only a tied 9th inning in a meaningful game can produce, not the sustained noise of a blowout crowd or the anxious quiet of a team being dominated, but something in between. Something alert. Something that knows it is about to witness something and is holding itself in readiness for whatever form that something takes. The Dodgers needed a run. One run. The mathematics of the situation were simple even if the execution was anything but. And then Shohei Ohtani stepped to the plate. The at-bat lasted 7 pitches. Each one of them felt longer than a single pitch has any right to feel. The pitcher, who had been holding the game together through the kind of focused, grinding effort that deserves its own story on another night, came after Ohtani with everything he had left. Fastballs located exactly where they needed to be. Breaking balls that asked genuine questions. Ohtani answered each one. Not with the bat every time. Sometimes with patience. Sometimes with a foul ball that was inches from being something more. Sometimes simply with the refusal to chase, that particular discipline at the plate that looks passive from the stands but is actually one of the most aggressive things a hitter can do, because it forces the pitcher to keep throwing, keep deciding, keep spending from a reservoir that is already running low. By the 7th pitch, the count was full. By the 7th pitch, the pitcher had given everything he had to give and Ohtani was still standing there. The 7th pitch was a fastball. Middle of the zone. The pitcher had run out of corners. Ohtani didn't miss it. The ball found the gap. Not a home run. Not the kind of ending that gets packaged into a 30-second highlight and played on a loop for a week. A line drive into the outfield, hard and low and exactly where it needed to be, the kind of hit that requires the same precision as a home run but produces something quieter. Something that depends on what happens next. What happened next was Ohtani running. He read the ball off the bat the way great base runners read it, immediately, completely, without hesitation. He was moving before the outfielder had even committed to a direction. He was thinking 2 bases while most people in the stadium were still processing 1. And the runner ahead of him was moving too. Moving home. The throw came in. The play was close enough that the stadium held the roar in its throat for a half second, that impossible fraction of time between a play happening and the brain confirming what the eyes just saw. Safe. The Dodgers had won. The celebration was the kind that happens when a team has been holding something tightly for a long time and is finally allowed to put it down. Players poured out of the dugout. The noise from the crowd became something physical, something you felt in your chest rather than simply heard with your ears. The player who scored was surrounded immediately, pulled into the kind of collective embrace that has no choreography and needs none. Ohtani stood in the middle of it and smiled. The real one. The one that appears in the moments that actually reach him, not the polished, camera-ready expression that comes with the territory of being the most recognizable athlete in baseball, but the genuine article. The smile of a man who is standing exactly where he wants to be, doing exactly what he came here to do, surrounded by exactly the people he came here to do it with. His teammates found him one by one. Each moment brief, each one carrying its own weight. A hand on the back. A word in the ear. The private language of a team that has been through enough together to communicate entire sentences in a single gesture. Dave Roberts sat in front of the microphone with the composed expression of a manager who has just watched his team do something difficult in the most difficult possible way and is still slightly in the process of letting himself believe it happened. He spoke about the at-bat first. He didn't need to be prompted. It was clearly the thing at the front of his mind, those 7 pitches, that full count, the moment when the pitcher had nothing left and Ohtani was still standing there waiting. That at-bat, Roberts said, and then paused as if deciding how much to say. That at-bat told you everything about where he is right now. His patience. His presence. The fact that he made that pitcher throw 7 pitches in a tied 9th inning and never looked uncomfortable for a single one of them. He shook his head slightly. The expression on his face was not quite a smile and not quite something more serious. It lived in between. There aren't many players in the history of this game who do that. In that moment. With that on the line. He didn't say Ohtani's name again. He didn't need to. Everyone in the room knew exactly who he was talking about. The series lead meant something. Roberts was direct about that when a reporter asked him to put it in context. It meant the Dodgers controlled their own outcome going into the final game. It meant the pressure of tomorrow sat on the other side of the field. It meant that whatever happened next, they had earned the position of the team that needed only to show up and compete rather than the team that needed to win or go home. That is a different feeling in a dugout. Anyone who has played the game knows it. The weight redistributes. The shoulders come down slightly. The decisions that would have been agonizing in a tied series become slightly more manageable when you are the team with the cushion. And then a reporter asked about the final game. About the pitching decision. About who would take the mound with a series lead and everything that comes with it. Roberts nodded. He had been expecting the question. Eric Lauer, he said. He's our guy tomorrow. That answer carried its own story into the night. Because Lauer taking the mound in the final game of a series, with a lead to protect, with the stakes as clear as they are going to get before October, is a statement of confidence that goes beyond the rotation. It is a manager saying, I trust this person with this moment. I trust what he brings. I trust what he will do when the game is real and the margin is thin and everything is on the line. Lauer would know that by morning. The whole baseball world would know it by morning. But tonight belonged to what had already happened. Somewhere in the noise and the celebration and the long slow process of a stadium returning to silence after something genuinely memorable, the image that stayed was the simple one. Shohei Ohtani. Running home. Controlled. Purposeful. His foot touching the plate. The Dodgers winning in the only way that completely satisfies, by making you wait for it long enough that when it finally arrives, it feels earned in the deepest possible sense. 9 innings. 7 pitches. 1 run. Series lead.